doing on this beautiful Wednesday evening. All of you that are here, thank you so much for coming to check it out. I hope we give you some good content tonight. As you know, and has been mentioned, I'm going to be interviewing my mom, Elizabeth Blythe. Everyone calls her Bitty. I call her Mom. I'm going to bring her on here in a second. But I would like to say, first of all, hello to everyone from different parts of the country. We have Seattle, Snowshoe, West Virginia. Didn't know there was a place called Snowshoe, West Virginia. Houston, Texas. A little bit, I'm glad you're here, as long as you're not an Astros fan. But here we go. Let me bring in Bitty, my mom. Hey, how you doing?
Fine. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Sure. No problem.
I appreciate it. Well, we've kind of trying to figure out what to talk about tonight, and I had a specific thing in mind, and what I had mentioned this earlier today, but it's interesting for people that have left Scientology and the Sea Org. Usually, when we get together, even if it's a family event, what ends up happening is you'll start talking about stories and things that happened to you in life, and things slowly come out. But because it's usually in a large group, you never really get to finish a whole train of thought and find out all the interesting details. And to be quite honest, up until the age of, I believe like 32, 33, when I left, you and I hadn't spent enough time together for you to really tell me your whole story. And that was actually the case with Foster and you. I knew nothing about your life before Scientology and before the Sea Org. And when I started finding out the fascinating things about you and Foster, it just endeared you guys more to me. So tonight is going to be a little bit about talking about your story before Scientology, so we have context, and then we'll, if we have time, we're going to get a little bit into our experiences together while in the Sea Org. We're going to talk about that mythical creature, Justin. That and then you're going to actually have to testify that he does actually exist, because I believe a lot of people don't believe that at this point. But without further ado, I would love to talk about, or just to get you talking about where you were born, where you came from, a little bit of family history. And I'm gonna let you just go off and start talking about that. And if I have a question, I'm just gonna pop in and say it. And this is really gonna be like a conversation if you and I sat down and had a coffee or a drink just to talk about it. But we're just doing it in public. So why don't you go ahead and start, and then we'll go, and there will be a question and answer period at the end, folks. So if you stick around, we'll definitely, if you have questions for Bitty or myself, we will do that. But go ahead. Chicago, right?
No, well, actually, I was born in Illinois.
Okay.
I was born in Woodstock, Illinois, which is a sort of a outskirt of Chicago. It's closer to Wisconsin. And I was on a dairy farm. And so I lived there for a little while, and then I moved. I went to a different school every year of my life, sometimes 2 different schools, and every year of my life. So
to clarify, was that because you were thrown out of schools, or because I was thrown out of school? So I want to know what your story is.
No, mine was moving. So I went to, a whole array of schools. And like I said in the other video that I was on with Janice, I was my family, my mom and my dad at that time, even though my mother had read Dianetics and was, doing Dianetic processes on us, as whatever. She was born a Lutheran, and he was born a Baptist, and they raised us. We went to Catholic schools. So I went to, my first grade was in St. Petersburg, or St. Peter's in Spring Grove, Illinois. And then I went to Spring Grove Elementary. And then when I hit Chicago, then when I was probably in the 3rd grade, I went to Our Lady of Lourdes. And then I did catechism for a long time, while also going on mission, going into the mission, Scientology mission. So it was like, I think that primarily I went to the Catholic schools because my mom felt the education was better, but I don't
Well,
know.
let me ask you this, because it may come as a surprise to a lot of people watching this live. A lot of these little details I don't know, so I'm
Yeah.
finding out for the first time. So bear with me on my facial expressions and different things like that. The fact that you remember the name of your schools is quite unbelievable to me. But you're in grade school. What approximate age did you start Scientology, and what was the first thing you did? And I'm wondering if that differs from my generation. So if you wouldn't mind, what was like the first? What was your first memory of doing any Scientology procedure, whether it was a course or auditing?
Right. Okay. So the first thing I remember becoming aware of it at that time, because again, I was raised in it, so I wasn't aware of the differences, what was different than what I was normally doing. But I do remember one time where, and this was my third school, which was Ravenwood in Chicago. So I went to St. Peter's, Spring Grove Elementary, and then Ravenwood. And I had hurt myself, and I'd fallen down or something playing some game in the schoolyard, and I immediately ran up to someone and started telling them all about it. And I would tell them about it once, twice, three times. I kept telling them about it, and then I went, okay, pain's gone, and then I would go away. And they looked at me like, "Are you crazy? Why'd you do that?" And I realized at that point, not everyone does that, but
But
I
is
did
that
it.
something you learned from Scientology?
My mother she used to tell us to, whenever we hurt ourselves or whenever, and I don't know what part of the book or anything that had anything to do with it, but she would tell us that we just keep talking about it until we don't have any more pain or interest in it. And so whenever I hurt myself, I would always grab the closest person and tell them all about it and what I thought, and how it hurt, and da 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 da, and everything about it. And then that would be, I do that until I was bored with it, which was usually pretty quick, and then go on to the next subject. So, but I became aware because the person I was telling it to looked at me like I was crazy. Like,
Right.
why am I doing this?
Yeah,
So
why are you explaining it? And to be clear, this wasn't a contact assist. And for everyone that watching, a contact assist is a Scientology procedure where, let's say you scraped your knee while playing basketball, you would actually go through the process of slowly recreating the exact physical action that created the pain. So you would in fall onto that same knee, you would do it slowly and carefully and make contact with the point of injury over and over again until that injury dissipated. Now you're talking about the injury, which is similar in certain ways, but not necessarily a contact assist. So I'm actually wondering if that existed when you were a kid, or do you remember how you picked up that particular
because
procedure?
and I don't want to get into it. I am not an expert on this field
No
at
problem.
all.
No
But
problem.
Dianetics and Scientology are different.
Right.
So Dianetics, which is what my mother started reading and what she, studied and all that type of stuff, she didn't even know what Scientology was until much later than even that incident. So this
Yeah.
must have been Dianetics, and it must have been, because I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and so it was before Scientology. She didn't get into Scientology really until the Chicago mission, which, by the way, I remembered the Scientologist that I had met, that I had known for the longest time, and her name was Renee Norton. And she was
Yes.
the
Yes.
supercargo of AOLA or something like that. So anyway, I remember my last talk, I couldn't remember her name, and then all of a sudden it came to me when I was sitting on the couch. So,
And that's how, and I actually, being terrible with names, as I was listening to your live with Janice, remembered that you had told me her name,
yeah.
but there's nothing I could do to remind you at that moment. But yeah, I've seen Renee Norton. I never actually met her, but it's so funny that I could see someone in a group of 3,000 people, which is what I would estimate the Sea Org was in between
Mhm.
LA and Golden Era Productions. I would estimate that was the size. And I remember seeing her several times, but it's funny that this would be a person that you knew
Yeah.
way back when. It always surprises me how there's a very small degree of separation between everyone inside Scientology and the Sea Org. Well, we know that because I was Shelley Miscavige's nephew and brother-in-law at the same time, which is strange. But please continue. Go ahead from there.
So anyway, that was my first. I don't know what it was with Dianetics or Scientology. I think it was Dianetics, and it was straight wire. It was just remembering what happened over and over again until it didn't hurt anymore. That's all I remember. Anyway, so I grew up in Illinois on a farm, and then because I wouldn't get in a car, I didn't go to kindergarten, so I went straight into first grade, and then moved up, and then we moved to Chicago. And I went there for different schools again. And I remember settling. The last school I was at was a school called Joyce Kilmer. And by the poet Joyce Kilmer, poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. That was on the outside of the building, but it was in Rogers
I
Park.
wish I knew who that poet was, but I grew up in a cult, so I'm not really familiar with a lot of literary stuff. But no, go ahead. Sorry.
So anyway, that was the school I went to. And speaking of literary, my mother was a literary genius. Why she was even into Dianetics was she read every book that came across. She used to read 3 books a night, and I remember her reading while she was cooking. She was never the greatest cook in the world, but she was so smart.
We know why now.
Yeah, and she would be reading while she was cooking and stuff like that. And she went to the university in Illinois at about 16 years of age. She was very smart, very ahead of her time, spoke Latin. At that time that was useful, I guess. And she was brilliant. So anyway, she was the one who got in. And then I had one of my sisters correct me on something I said on my last talk with Janice and Mark, which was that I had said that my dad, I didn't think was a Scientologist when he had joined the Sea Org in 71. And they said he absolutely was not. So my mother was very much a strong it's funny. In general, I would say she was not. But on that one subject of getting us all into the SO and all over, into the Sea Org and over to LA.
And yeah, I don't want you to jump ahead too far, because I do want to get that particular moment in time when you joined the Sea Org. But would you mind if I asked you a question about Jana and your father Sterling quickly, whom I'm named after?
Right.
You moved into Chicago. Now, obviously there wasn't a whole lot of farms in Chicago.
Right.
So the thought that crossed my mind when you were telling that section of your story was, how did that work? And I mean, you were a big family, right? That's one thing I don't think a lot of people know.
Right.
You're up. What was it? 8, 9 kids?
We had 9. I have 8 brothers and sisters. So it was
Right.
9 children. 10 were born. 1 didn't make it. So it was a very large family. Yeah.
And would you mind, if it's okay with you, could you just give me the list of the brothers and the sisters in order and where you fall into place on that? I think that
so I'm right in the middle. I got 4 older, 4 younger. And so the oldest one was Bitty Blythe, and then Jennifer Pantramule Blythe, John William Blythe, Mickey, who's no longer with us, Michael Joseph Blythe, myself, Elizabeth Ann Blythe, and then I have a sister and a brother who were born on the same day as me, June 1st. And I was born in 1957. My brother James was born June 1st, 1958, sorry. And then my sister was born June 1st, 1959, and that's Teresa. So there's James, Teresa, and then there was another sister I had by the name of Mary.
So you're in the middle. So you're in the middle. You have 3 older brothers, if I'm doing the math right.
No, 2 older brothers.
And 1 older sister.
Sorry?
And 1 older sister?
No, 2 older sisters, 2 older brothers.
Okay.
And then I have 1 younger brother and then 3 younger sisters.
Oh my God. See, it doesn't even occur to me that there were that many brothers and sisters, because I think I hadn't even met some up to a certain point in my life. But for me, because I'm close to Sarah.
Well, Sarah's the youngest, and I was going to say I didn't mention her name yet, but she was the absolute youngest of all of
she was the baby.
Yeah.
She was such a baby in the family that I believe she had Griffey's kids were almost the same age as her, and they grew up like brother and sister.
No,
Or sister and sister, yeah.
there's 5 years difference between Sarah and I, and there's 5 years difference between Sarah and my first niece, which is
Okay.
Laura.
Okay.
Or Love.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll go more into your sisters in another interview because there's a lot of fun stories and we could talk about them forever. And actually, your youngest sister Sarah was my immediate supervisor for the longest time when I was in the grounds department of Golden Era Productions, and absolutely one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And we'll talk those stories. And I would actually love some point to possibly get her on here to talk about that, because I'm sure she has some stories, and her husband Jim Mortland has interviewed with Janice and Mark already. But let's go back to hop on to Chicago. And out of curiosity, you were in rural Illinois, you moved to Chicago. So how did that change the family dynamic with your father and mom? Meaning, what were they doing at the time to support themselves? I'm genuinely interested.
So my father had been a farmer, and he went to school for it. He has that's what he did. And at that time, you've heard of farm aid, right? So that at that time, a lot of the big farmers pushed the little farmers out, and he was a little farmer. And so he sort of got pushed out, and then they came to Chicago. My mother was, an editor of for various companies, different companies. And she was, so she would read their documents and edit them and proofread them and all this type of thing. She had all the proofreading things down. I remember writing letters to my mom, and she would write back, and I'd see that she had proofread it, you know what I mean? So it was kind of interesting. Like she would have red marks on the side, saying I misspelled something, or I should have capitalized something, or I didn't have the correct punctuation or something. So she would always note that. Anyway, so we went there. It was a bit of a shock for us because we were very countrified. And so now we came to a big city, which was Chicago. So we all sort of, it was pretty much a culture shift for us, you know what I mean? So to answer that question.
And you may have already said it, but then what was your father doing at that time? Did he stay doing the farming rurally?
No. So he sold the farm, and then he was a mason, a bricklayer.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what he did. And he did very well at it, and he became a foreman and this type of thing. And so he did that. Us kids were just in schools. Like I said, we moved every year until we ended up in where I went to Joyce Kilmer, and we went to that was a part of Chicago called Rogers Park.
Okay.
So we lived there, and just did the regular stuff at that time. We would do classes and stuff at night, like I mentioned,
in the
TRs and training regiments and stuff. And then I went. At that time, I actually went to Jamaica on a flight with a friend. We were playing baseball. I played baseball all the time in Chicago. And after school, I was playing baseball, and one of my friends came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want to go to Jamaica?" And I went, "Yeah, sure," And they said, "Well, my mom will go, and she'll take us, and we'll go for a couple months, and fly down there." So anyway, her mom met with my mom, and it got agreed that I would go and be with her. With this girl, her name was Karen Selensky, I think was her last name. But anyway, we went and we flew TWA. I remember the seats were so big, and I remember I went and cut off jeans and a baseball cap.
Well, and I have to mention the baseball. Mention two things. One, that it's not always that in a family that skills or trades are passed down, but I do find it fascinating that your father, my grandfather, was a mason and, worked in a very hands-on field like that. And, as we know, the mythical Justin also is a fantastic, he's a carpenter, but a fantastic GC and does a lot of work like that. And don't know if that passes down, but I find that interesting. I didn't actually remember that he did that later on, but hey, that's cool. on you baseball. You were a Cubs fan as a kid, and I love baseball, as you know.
Yes, I went to Wrigley's Field. I went to and watched, I think where I was Ernie Banks and Ron Sorkins. I remember because I think Ernie Banks played first base and Ron Sorkins did shortstop. Anyway, I
Okay.
went to a Wrigley's game and watched them there, and it was fun. I was a huge baseball fan. Now, we weren't allowed, girls weren't allowed to play baseball with a hard ball in school, so we had to play softball. But after school, I could play hardball, so I
You
would
could play.
do that after school.
I'm assuming they used like a cloth ball back in the day for the girls too, where they, yeah, just so that if you hit the ball, there would be no injuries on the field.
It was a softball, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then just had the baseball thing. I had to get in there and mention that. All right, you went in Jamaica, I believe, was your first time you ever flew anywhere.
Yeah, it was the first time out at all anywhere, and that was in 1970 or 1969. I don't remember exactly when. And we flew from Chicago to Miami to over to Jamaica, and when we went to Ocho Rios.
Okay.
And I remember it was a great experience because it was the first time out of the country, first time experiencing anything. And I would be talking to people on the docks and, and around, and they, I would find out that they would fish for their dinner. And to me, that was like, oh my goodness, fishing for your dinner. So they would do that. And it was just an incredible experience as for a young person. I was there a couple months.
I mean, that's pretty awesome, especially at that age. And if you've lived in Chicago for, your whole life up to that point, anything tropical like Jamaica would be unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. And Ocho Rios is a very tropical part of the Caribbean. Caribbean mostly is not, but in that part it is. And waterfalls and all this other stuff. It was quite nice. I remember my big experience. I'd never realized until later, and that was when I was in Jamaica. There was this old sea captain who I'd talked to and befriended and all that. And he came up to me one time and he said, don't ever go out at night. And it was hard to communicate because he spoke a different language at that time and than I did. Papiamento is what he spoke. But anyway, he was speaking then. He was telling me not to go out at night. And I was like, okay, why? I'm from Chicago. It's not a problem. I can take care of myself, And but he brought up at that point, he pointed to my hair, which at that time was blonde, and said, no. And anyway, later on, I realized he was speaking of white slavery and to not go out at night alone because I could be kidnapped or something like that. And I didn't realize it until later what he was even referring to.
Right.
Yeah.
It didn't even occur to you. You were so young at the time. Well, you get back from Jamaica. Now, you mentioned that your mom got you in the Sea Org. Now, from my point of view as a second generation Scientologist, I'm trying to figure out where in Chicago would there even be any presence of a Sea Org recruiter, or do you even know how your mom, Jana, was approached for that?
I don't know how she was approached at all.
Okay.
I know that we had to go to LA to get in the
And did she take the whole family with her to LA?
Yep.
Holy! I'm assuming you drove a bus.
A minibus, mini car, and the whole way, So we stopped in various places that I can remember with friends or people that we knew, and some of them, like I think two of my older sisters were already gone by that time. And that was Jennifer and Griffey, and they were already gone. Plus, my brother Johnny was already in the Sea Org on the Apollo.
Oh, interesting. Now, when you say gone with Griffey and Jennifer, and of course, I knew Griffey very, very well. Bless her, I miss her. She actually was one of my first auditors in Scientology, and thank God, because there's a whole story about that sometime, about wrangling me back into an auditing room once, and if it wasn't her, I don't think I would have gone back in. But what were they doing back then? Did they join Scientology, or were they actually working somewhere when they were of age?
My sister Jennifer was in Scientology, and she was in LA, and she lived there. Okay. My sister Griffey, I don't actually remember totally where she was. I don't know that she was in at that point, but very, I think she lived in Texas. And that's
Really?
because one of the areas we went to was Texas, and I remember seeing her there and all that. So
On your way over to LA.
exactly,
Okay. Okay.
exactly.
Okay, good. So the
So
whole family goes over to LA.
mhm.
Do you remember what part of LA you were living in when you first got there?
I was near. I know that we joined at AOLA,
Okay.
so
Okay.
that's all I remember about it.
See, that's
Sorry.
fascinating. You know what? You know, I never knew that.
Yeah.
And I spent so much time at AOLA as a kid because of Barbara being the senior CSint, or even Will Hare. Wow, what's her name? You'll know. Greg Wilhare's
Sandy.
ex. Sandy
Sandy.
Wilhare.
And I don't think at that time, when I say I joined at AOLA, at that time, I think you just joined the Sea Org. You didn't join AOLA, ASHO, Excalibur, blah, blah, blah. You just joined the Sea Org, and then you got assigned to wherever,
Wherever you're going. What age were you when you guys landed in LA? Do you remember?
I was 14 when I landed in LA. I think this trip started when I was when I was 13.
Okay, and you get there. Your mom joins. I'm assuming your mom joins the Sea Org.
Yeah.
And what's the conversation with, like, you're really interested to know, what's the conversation with you? You're 14. You probably still want to live life. You're now in sunny California, which there's an abundance of things to do and the beach and stuff. How does she, and I don't want to say convince or coerce, but how does she get you to go, hey, this is a great idea? And I'm assuming you're so young that, of course, you don't know a billion-year contract. You don't know that it's all it's going to be, but there's something that lit inside of you and went, this may be fun, whether it was just the opportunity to go travel and go on a ship and float for the next 20 years or whatever it may be. Do you remember what it was that?
No, I mean, I think I mentioned in the Janice and Mark thing as well that when I didn't want to go at first, I didn't want to go at all. And my mom, she was very strong on we all had to go. And so we didn't. It's not like we were like we decided, hey, yeah, we're going to go. We were like had to go. And so when I got there, I didn't like think of LA like sunny Southern California with the beaches and all that. I didn't even know about it really at
Right.
that time. And so I just went with her, followed, did whatever she said to do at that time, and what my dad had said to do, and so we joined, we went there. I stayed, like I said, when they left because of, and I would say primarily because of the way I was treated as an equal. I was like, oh, you want my opinion on that? Or,
Right.
hey, you can do this job and you can work full time and you can, so there was all these elements of it that were appealing to me as a young kid, you know what I mean? That they did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've actually heard that from several other people. I mean, I'm not an advocate for child labor in any way, and especially not in the Sea Org, but there was a certain allure to being, treated like an adult to some degree.
Yeah, I came from a farm, so child labor wasn't a
No,
big
and I get
issue for
that,
me,
and
you know what I mean?
that
Yeah,
doesn't negate anyone else's experience, because
right.
at the same time, giving a child more responsibility, and instilling in them a sense of confidence is not the same as adulticizing a child and then committing some sort of sexual assault on them. Let's separate those two. They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
There is an appeal, and there isn't even an argument towards, hey, giving a kid more responsibility and stuff like that is a good thing. Now, that's not the same as the Sea Org, endured labor and all the different things that come along with that. But there was, and you are a different generation for sure back then. Whereas that wouldn't have been necessarily frowned upon. But and even in my generation, there'll be debates in the future, I'm sure. My experience at the ranch, the Golden Air Productions Ranch, which you formed, I believe you talked to Janice about that.
Mhm.
My experience wasn't horrific in that I'm like, okay, we're going to help build some things that we're going to stay in. We're going to help build our sports field. We're going to get to play sports. And I was leaving an environment in LA where I had to run down my street at night so that I didn't get mugged. And so it's a different experience, and everyone's experience as it moves through time changes on depending on what the current mindset is about those sort of things. So to be fair to everyone, child labor, not a great thing. Don't condone it. But at the same time, we're talking about your experience back in the early 70s and how that affected you and how you looked at it. And I think looking at it like I was given more responsibility and you enjoyed not just being treated like an annoying child, well, that's going to build confidence in you and make you feel different about things. And they are two separate things. Moving forward, though, you joined the Sea Org. Were you sent to the Apollo, which is the ship L. Ron Hubbard was on, immediately, or what was the between signing your contract and joining the Sea Org? How did you eventually make it over to the ship? If you don't mind.
That was years later.
Oh wow! So you were in the Sea Org in LA for a while.
I was in LA and then I left because I had to. I was taken out because I had no legal guardian.
Okay.
So
well, where was your mom then? She left LA too?
My mom and father had left at that time, and were no longer in California. So I was there alone and I was underage. And there was a mission at that time, and there was, I think, raids conducted, though I'm not sure of all that side of it, but raids conducted on USLO for children, looking for children without guardians. So I had to leave. And my father, sorry, to back up, my father would not turn over legal guardianship to anyone he did not know. He was not particularly happy about the state of kids and all that, and the care and all that in the church at that time at all. And so he would not turn over legal guardianship of me to anyone. So I had to go home.
Yeah. So at this time, had you already signed a contract? You were actually staff somewhere when he wouldn't sign over legal guardianship?
Yeah, I was at USLO.
Oh, okay. I didn't. And where was that located, if you don't mind me asking?
Beacon Street is all I remember in LA.
Okay. So when they left, I'm assuming you were sleeping in a dorm of some sort.
No. So what happened was, at that time, is the way it used to operate at that time is I joined at AOLA. I wasn't assigned to AOLA. I just joined the Sea Org. I then went to the Excalibur and did, I think, Product Zero is what it's called, which included certain ship training and also staff statuses and all this type of thing. Once I graduated that, I was assigned, don't know by who, to USLO, and I worked there. I did, they had a lot of buildings, and I don't even remember them all, but they had a lot of old buildings. I remember that. And so I stayed in one, it might've been a dorm. Don't remember it really well enough. But I stayed in one, and then Ann Burgess, I believe her name was on a mission there to make sure they didn't, that they were legal, that the USLO was all legal and operating legally. And so I got called in. I got asked, do I have any legal guardian? I said no. And I then got my father on the line, and they tried to, and he said, no, he's not turning over legal guardianship to anyone. And then, so I went home. I went back at that. When I say I went home, I went to Denver, Colorado at that time. Because that's
because this is now where your father was living, in Denver.
Yes.
With
the rest of my family that were there at that time. So that's how we came to, that's why part of my family is from Chicago, like me. And then the other part, like Sarah, are from Colorado.
Okay. That makes sense. I've never connected those two dots.
Yeah. So that's,
so you actually have to leave the Sea Org for a brief moment in time, just because your father would not sign over any sort of
legal guardianship
for you.
Right.
Interesting. Now, did that rub anyone in the church the wrong way? Did he get away with that? What happened there?
Well, I don't know. So I don't know what went on behind closed doors. I know that at the time it was thought that, no, I should leave, and I had to leave. I was of no value to them, particularly at this time. I wasn't known for anything, and I was just a little kid. And so I was sec checked. That's the first time I ever got what was referred to as the Joe Berg. And I remember most of it was a word clearing of the words in it, because I didn't know what they meant. And
did they sec check you for going somewhere, or did they just sec check you because they decided?
Because I was leaving.
because you're leaving. Oh, you got the Joburg for okay. So just to clarify again, I'm talking to you, Mom, and I have to constantly remember that a majority of the people listening, if they haven't listened to everyone else's channels, might not know what the Joburg sec check is. But Joburg security check, and I've never had it, but it is a particular interrogation that L. Ron Hubbard wrote. I don't know when exactly it was implemented or why it was used, but it is a somewhat brutal interrogation, and it's nothing you'd ever want to put on. I'm assuming you were 14 years, 15 years old at this point. Nothing you'd ever want to put any child through. That being said, because you were leaving the Sea organization, even though it wasn't because of you, it was because your father wouldn't sign over legal guardianship, you were put through an interrogation, which I'm assuming you were so squeaky clean at that particular time that it really didn't have any effect on you. And it's such a grotesque interrogation that I'm going to guess that you didn't even know what half the words meant in it because you never even experienced something like that in your life.
Right, exactly. The Joburg is after Johannesburg, so I guess it was developed when he was in South Africa.
Okay.
And so a lot of the questions really had to do more with what was going on there, I guess, at that time, which would have been the 60s or something like that. Janice will remember. But
of course she will.
So I think it had to do with that. And so it was just a check that was done on like if you left, you got that check. If you went to the Apollo, you got that check. You know what I mean? So it's like it was used in that. And yes, most of my time was spent. What is that? What is that? You know what I mean? I didn't know what half of it was. So anyway, I got that check, and then I got sent back to Colorado.
Okay. And how long were you back in Colorado for?
A year and a half.
And then what and how did you get back? Because you were essentially out of the Sea Org for that year and a half then.
Right. My sister turned 18.
Okay.
So she could become my legal guardian.
Which sister was this, and was she still in the Sea Org?
I'm trying to remember if it was Griffey or Jennifer, and I don't remember, but it was one of those two. It was nothing even in writing other than I think my dad said, okay, one of those two are my legal guardian, and that was all that was needed.
For you to go back to LA.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So they definitely were like, even though you had left and you got the Joburg interrogation, they were still like, okay, once we have someone that could legally be her guardian with her father's permission, you're coming back.
Yes.
And in the time in between, did you go to normal high school?
I did. I tried to. I went to 2 different high schools there. Well, one was a junior high. I went to Grant or Gove. I forget it. My sisters will remember, and they're probably yelling at the computer right now saying, "No, you went." Well, but it was Grant or Gove, and then I got taught at home a little bit because it was like my mom said, no, she doesn't do well in school, so she taught me at home quite a bit, and then I went to East High School.
East High School. I don't want to let that one get away. Your mom said you weren't that good at school?
No, she never said that. She said that it wasn't good. It wasn't good for me to have me go to this school. So she wanted to teach me at home. I don't know why. Just because I didn't get along, and I got
were
into
you
fights.
getting in fights? I just want to know where I get it from, Mom. That's all.
No, I probably did. But I wasn't like kicked out of school or anything at that time. That happened previously in Joyce Homer.
So your mom wanted to homeschool you?
Yeah, and she did. And she got all the materials and all the stuff together and worked with me for a good year on stuff,
Oh, wow. Okay.
She was a teacher too, so.
Right. And wicked smart. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that about her. Very, very smart. Okay, good. So legal guardianship, one of your sister turns 18, you can go back. You go back to LA.
Right. And
what
I go
age
to
are you now?
CC Int at that point.
CC Int?
Right. Because
really?
I like.
And was that in the Manor Hotel or was that in the Los Angeles?
It was not in the Manor Hotel. It was in a different building. And again, Janice will remember the building, but it was dark wood. And it was, and I remember being there, and Yvonne was there, and I went through all the people that I knew at that time, Pat Walteri and a lot of people were there. Irene Derman, Jack Derman, and a lot of all these people at that time. I was pretty young, so I
Yeah.
forget. I was still under 16 though.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and the reason I know that is because then the truant officers start showing up saying, hey, you have to have all 16-year-olds have to go to school. If you're under the age of 16, you have to go to school.
Right. Right.
And I didn't want to go to school. And so
Eh,
at that time, I didn't.
All right. And I want to say that there's another person there that I knew that I had no clue whatsoever that you knew, which is Pat Gualteri.
Yeah.
And in Pat Gualteri, when I first got to Golden Era Productions, when I was about 14, 15, nicest guy in the world. He was the music manager, I believe. And I did not know that you knew him. He never mentioned it to me, even though I had several interactions with him, but a very, very nice gentleman.
Yeah.
And I believe he left at some point, maybe in the late early 2000s or something like that, but you knew him there, and you met Janice's mom.
Yeah.
Can I ask what you thought of Janice's mom?
I thought she was great. She was wonderful. She was the nicest person. She was very kind to me. And she sort of took me under her wing because I was young, like her daughters. And she would always say, oh, you're like my daughters, who I didn't know at that time. The only ones I knew at that time were Dee Dee and, Gail and stuff like that, who I'd met at the USLO. So she was very warm, very nice. And she helped me. She said, well, I can tell you one way not to have to go to school, and that is to go to the ship, to go to the Apollo.
Interesting.
And that
Right.
was
Because it's
why
in
I actually ended
international
up going.
waters. Yeah. They can't enforce anything.
Right.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. So,
Wow. But
anyways,
yeah, I have to say that from every interview I've heard so far on this network, SPTV network, no one has anything bad to say about Yvonne. She seems like she was the true example of what in a perfect world Scientologist would have been. Super nice. But again, I would say that it's not because of Scientology she was that way. I would say she was just that way.
yeah.
Which we know about a lot of people there. Because if you're a bad person, you get in Scientology, you don't necessarily get better. If you're a good person, you get in Scientology, you're still a good person. You might swing a little bit over to the left and get a little bit mean sometimes, but you're still a good person deep down, in my opinion. But okay. So okay, good. So now you're told that you can get out of school if you go to the ship. But once we get to the ship, besides the dating Mike Rinder, which we got to talk about, even Justin called me on the phone. We're talking today. He's like, did you know mom dated Mike Rinder? I'm like, I think she mentioned at some point. He's like, can't believe that. And it is a little bit of a shock because we've known Mike and his kids for so long that we're like, really, that happened? But so what we'll do is we'll if it's okay with you, we'll get up to the Apollo, and then how you got there and everything you've done so far is, to me, it's just fascinating. I love learning about it. But we'll get to the Apollo. We'll talk about Mike. We'll talk about Foster. But then we're going to jump ahead because we can save most of your Apollo stuff for the next time you talk with Janice, because I really think that's going to go over my head. And it's not really, it's fascinating, but it's not really, and that my favorite picture of you, and I wish I could find it. I don't know where it is anymore, but my favorite picture of you is on the Apollo. You're wearing a blue bandana, and I think you're at the helm or the compass or something like that. And I will find this picture so I can put it up at some point. But yeah. So Yvonne suggests you going to the Apollo. Please continue from there.
Okay, so I went over to, at that time, I think USLO is now called FOLO, West US. And I met a lot of people there. And Steve Marlowe was the FPPO, Flag Personnel Procurement Officer or something like that. And so he would bring people to flag. And you had to do a form at that time, which was called the GO 824. So I guess that's the number, GO, Guardian's Office 824. And you had to meet all these qualifications, get a sec check of, all this type of stuff. And so I did all that and then was able to go. And I think that I covered this in detail with Janice, in that I had to learn the quote unquote shore story of what you had to, who you said you were, and that, and why you were going, why I was traveling to Portugal or Spain or wherever I went in, and at by myself at a young age, and so learned all that. Then got sent off and arrived, and at that time was when I went to the Apollo. At that time, I arrived. My brother was there. I would not at that time. I did not go into the CMO at all. I went to the engine room with my
Right.
brother because I
Right.
wanted to be with my brother, and he was the one I knew. And um, at that time, I mentioned this earlier. I was afraid of cars. I would not go in a car. I wouldn't. It would, for some reason, just weird fear or something. And so I thought, oh, if I worked in the engine room, I would get over that. You know what I mean?
And to be clear, so everyone knows, I'm afraid of cars when my mom's driving. So I completely understand that. Sorry, I had to say that. That's the only time I'm going to throw you under the bus. I promise. Go ahead.
But anyway, so I, went there and worked in the engine room and all that type of stuff for quite a while. I remember getting then at some point message runs, which at that time was basically when LRH wanted to talk to you on the ship, he would send one of his messengers, of which there were many, and then they were young, and he would send them to you, and they would say, LRH wants to know blah, whatever the question was. And in this case, the question was, are you the same person that wrote to me from Folo West US? That said that you liked HCOs. And I said, yes. And then he made me this job, and this was 16 November 1974. So I arrived, I was made external HCO aide at that point. That's when I
Wow.
started going out with Mike. He was the
Okay, so
CO.
you're not going to get off that easy on that segue. Um, so so 74, that would be 2 years before Justin and I were born. And it's a ship. How many people were on the ship, would you guess?
350, maybe
Oh,
325.
so you would see Mike and Foster was on the ship at this time too.
He was my senior. Yes.
Oh, Foster. Okay, so just in case there's a number of people watching this live stream that don't know. So Foster Tompkins is my father. Obviously my mom is the person I'm talking to. So they were both on the Apollo, which was the Scientology Sea Org ship that L. Ron Hubbard was the captain or commodore of way back in the day. So you're in HCO, which is Hubbard Communications Office, which is essentially it's the HR, human resources arm of any particular organization that it's in. And I'm assuming Foster and Mike at the same time.
Yeah.
You've met them both.
Right.
Okay. Mike was in which area of the ship was he located, or what was his position?
He was the COFB's communicator.
Oh, interesting. And then what was Foster?
He was what was called at that time the supercargo.
He was a supercargo of FB.
Yes.
Okay, so they would have known each other pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay. So you dated Mike before you started dating Foster.
Yes.
Okay. Just because I got to know, for you at that age, what did dating mean? Because for me, dating was something, as a second generation. And when I became of age, when I was going through my high school years, I was obviously at Golden Era Productions at the Int base, and dating was kind of strange, as you know, because of all the rules regarding, what you could and couldn't do as far as sexual activities and stuff like that. Now, I'm not asking you for that particular subject. I'm just asking, what was dating on the ship?
Well, we would have liberties, every week. Actually, at that time, it was every week. And then we would go out and we would go to the beach or go to the movie theater or something like that. That was kind of what it was, or go off and do something, you know what I mean? And so that's
Right.
what we would do.
Right.
boyfriend, girlfriend type thing. It wasn't dating as in, oh, I'm going to now go see you, meet your parents and, go do this type of thing. It was just like you would hang out with each other.
Yeah, you predominantly hang out with Mike when you guys had the outings and do stuff like that.
Right.
Do you remember who asked who out?
No.
You do not remember that.
No.
But there was at one point an agreement that you guys were dating.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay, and just to be clear, Mike Rinder, which I don't need to explain who that is. Later on, he actually became Justin and I's godfather. And then even later than that, when Justin and I were in our teens and we were both going to the ranch property next to Golden Air Productions, my mom, her husband at the time, Ronnie, Mike and Kathy, they lived together. So when we would go see our parents.
So you know, on the ship, Kathy Rinder at that time, Kathy Rubio.
Oh, I didn't know she was on the ship.
Yeah, she was one of my closest friends. So
okay,
she was older than me, and she was my closest friend. So was Mike, older than me, and then so it sort of flip flopped. You know what I mean? She then started dating him and whatever. But so she then later married Mike, and then we remained friends, and she, so that's why. So when I won't get into all the details, but when you're in the SO, you have rooms together with people, and I was always connected with the Rinders that way.
Yes,
Mike and Kathy and their kids, Taryn and Benjamin, and all that.
Yeah, and so growing up, Taryn, Justin, and I, being around the same age, would always spend time together. And then Jenna and Benjamin, Jenna, my little sister, and Benjamin were very close friends. And later on, when Nathan, my little brother, came around, Nathan ended up being Benjamin's best friend for the longest time. And then, and this is a whole other story, which we'll get into at a later interview. But Benjamin and Nathan ended up being shipped off to Florida at some later date, and they were there together, and that's a whole story. But yeah, so Mike has been close to the family for the longest time, and even when Mike Rinder left the Sea Org, I believe the first person he contacted was you and Ronnie, and you guys put him up and helped him out, helped him get started in Virginia. Am I correct?
Yeah, he tried to contact us originally. I think he first went to Tom DeVox in Florida. And because he couldn't get a hold of Ronnie or something, or he tried to call our home phone number and couldn't get through or something. And then at that time I don't think we had cell phones, but we had a landline. And so he couldn't get through. So he went to Tom DeVox and then called and came over to Virginia.
Right. Yeah. Which is crazy. I mean, I believe Mike's talked about that in his book. That's a whole story in itself. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna get to Foster, and I hope Penny, Wendy, and Alexa get to watch this video, because they're giant fans of Foster, as am I. Essentially, he's my dad. But if you don't mind me asking, how did you and Foster get together? Because I look at my dad and I consider him a giant goofball. He's so nice. He's funny. He's got so many redeeming qualities. I wish he would leave, and I know you do too, because I know, And one thing I have to say to you, which one thing I love about you and I've always respected, is that no matter what the scenario is, you've always spoken well about Foster, and that makes a big difference to me. Because growing up, he's the person I was closest to. Sorry, I'm getting a little teared up on this. And I know I look at things in a funny way, and I know my outlook on life is usually optimistic. And part of that, I think, comes from Foster, because he was really just he is a happy-go-lucky guy, and he really is a nice person. There's no question about that. And to this day, his family, his sisters, Prue, Penelope, Pam, I mean, they're the people that the family that I spend the most time with. Even if it's not a lot of time, it's the most time. But I would love to know, because I can't ask him, how your relationship with him started. How did how that came to be, if you don't
I
mind.
don't, and I'm sorry, but I don't remember exactly. I mean, I
And that's
just know
okay.
that
That's okay. Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I just know that he was I dealt with him every single day, and that over time, we just got together. You know what I mean? And you know,
And there's two ways that happens. It's love at first sight, or it's you beat them into submission. So
um,
I'm going to assume it's you. He beat you into submission.
um, yeah, I don't know, and
Okay.
so it's hard to say. But we were together for a long, for at that point, and
Right.
then shortly thereafter, the whole Relay Office New York happened, and he was there, and I was there. We weren't married yet at that point, but we were both together there, and
And
he
why had you? Okay, so he went to Relay Office New York. Why did you leave the ship then?
to go to Relay Office New York as well. I don't remember, that time is kind of blurry to me. I don't
Okay,
remember
totally get that. Yeah, yeah,
exactly, but
yeah.
we were both in Relay Office New York, and he was running all the communication lines between all of the organizations and the Relay Office New York, because the Apollo was sort of shut down at that time.
Interesting. Now, weren't you coming back from an LOA? Oh, sorry, LOA. Weren't you coming back from
A
a,
leave,
a
yeah, a
leave?
vacation with my family and seeing my family. Yeah,
And you couldn't get back to the ship, so you
right,
had to stop in New York.
right.
Interesting. Okay, okay. And then so that's kind of where things started. And what that must have been 75, maybe
Yeah, no, they
75.
started earlier. I mean, I was
Okay.
with him earlier on the ship, and
Okay.
then later, and then we got married. I think in I forget what year, but
Yeah, what I've never asked that question. I only started everything from September 1976 because that's when we were born. Um, when did you get married? How long after you were married were we born? Exactly 9 months?
about 10 months,
Okay.
about there.
Do you remember what date it
Um,
was you were married?
no, sorry.
Okay. That's okay, that's okay.
I would
I
have it
only
on the
remember when I was married because it was inscribed in my ring.
yeah.
So I don't expect you to remember that. Also, it was not that long ago. Um, okay, okay. Now we were born September 7th, so that does make us New Year's resolutions essentially. Um,
Exactly. So it was around there. It was around Christmas, New Year's, around that
okay,
time period. That.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were with him, uh, and so we're right at about an hour. Um, and I hate to keep track on the clock here, but what I want to do is not overwhelm with the information, because we could talk for 5 hours and get
Hmm.
halfway through essentially.
Hmm.
Um, and thank you so much, because everything you said so far, believe it or not, to some people watching this is the first time I've heard a lot of these details.
Yeah.
Uh, and I really appreciate hearing them. I really do.
Hmm.
So okay, good. So you're within the Relay Office. You're married, and you've told the story to Janice about how you didn't even know you had twins. So what was you were going to name the child, if you had one? Was it Justin Sterling Tompkins,
Yeah, it
or?
was no, it was Sterling Justin Tompkins
Oh,
was
interesting.
the Sterling was always after my dad. And so I
Right.
always wanted to name, and I always loved that name, and so I had that. And Justin was a name I selected because I liked that name too and what it meant and all that. And so then, but you got when I had two kids, I said Sterling William, which is my dad's exact name,
Yeah.
and then Justin, and then Lyle, which was Foster's father's middle name.
And it's also my Aunt Penny's middle name.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, and I embarrassingly called her on the phone one day to make fun of Justin, as I usually do, and I made fun of the middle name Lyle, not
Great.
knowing that was her middle name. And the thing is, Penny's such a sweetheart. She let me get away with it, and I was so happy she did, because I felt so bad at that point. Because really, I just make fun of the name because it's Justin's. Uh, but she let me get away with that. But that's interesting. Okay, so you split up the names. I got your father's name, which I've thanked you for
Mhm.
innumerable amount of times,
Mhm.
because every time I go to Starbucks, it's a perfect conversation starter. Um, Now, mind you, it gets misspelled all the time, and I actually see a lot of people in the chat that are from the UK, or Europe will spell it Stirling, like
Right.
Stirling Castle, which is in Scotland. So that's funny. But again, I've thanked you a million times. I love my name. It's unique in a certain way. Okay, so you're completely surprised by having twins. Um,
Right.
didn't you tell me someone guessed you were having twins?
So, um, in the ESO at that time, we worked up till like we delivered the baby. So we
C
worked up to
organization. Yeah.
in the C organization. What did I say?
Yeah. SO.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay. Right. So we worked up until that point, and so I worked throughout that whole time. And they only ever thought I had one person, which was Shelly, actually, came up to
Shelley
me and
Miscavige?
yeah,
Okay.
and she said, "Hey, you're having twins," and I went, "No, I'm not." There's actually two people that did that. She was one, and then said, "Oh, are you having twins?" And I said, "No, not that I know of." And then when I went to the hospital as you guys were being born, or at that time, there was a candy striper, and that's an older person that works with the hospitals or whatever. And a lot of times they work with the babies and delivering babies and stuff like that. And so she was an older woman, volunteer candy striper, and she had a
Okay.
pink and white outfit on. Anyway, and she came and listened with her ear on my stomach and said, "Oh, are you having twins?" And I said, "No, I'm just having one. That's what I was told." And so then she came back later after you guys were born and said, "Oh, there's two of them." So
Yeah, and to be clear, Justin was born first.
right.
And then I was the surprise. And I remain to be the surprise for the rest of my life, apparently. But
Mhm.
we were born so close to 12 a.m. at night that we were almost born on separate days,
Yeah,
if I remember that
exactly.
correctly. Yeah. Uh,
Exactly. So it was like 12:05 or something. I think Justin was born, and or something like that, or it was very close. It was, I forget which way it went, but it was very close. So it could have been two
yeah.
different days.
And a story for another time, which I think I've mentioned to you. At one point when I was playing Little League Baseball in LA, I needed to show proof of my age because I was being accused of playing in a league that I wasn't the appropriate age for. And when I asked for my birth certificate, believe it or not, Foster Barber for some reason did not have my birth certificate. So I don't know how, but we had Justin's, or at least a copy of it. So for the rest of that season in Little League in LA, I had to be referred to as Justin. I don't know if I ever told you that story.
No, I don't remember. I have both of yours right now.
No, of course you have both of them, but we're talking about Foster and Barbara.
Yeah.
Barbara probably had Nathan's, no question about that. She
Yeah.
probably had it framed and laminated, but Foster didn't
Yeah.
have mine.
Yeah.
So, and reaching out to you would not have been an option at that point,
Right.
I'm guessing. Um, okay, good. So we're born. I think at this point you're in management in Florida, the Commoner's Messenger organization. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, what I want to do is this I'm I'm really thoroughly enjoying this. So thank you so much to
Mhm.
find out these details. Is really interesting, and reflecting on it's fun. But I don't want to go too long because I think we can have this discussion again. And I know you're going to continue to do interviews with Janice. So I would love just to save. We're going to stop at being born in Clearwater, and we can continue it from there at another date if that's okay with
Good.
you. Okay, great.
Totally fine.
Would you be okay with doing some question and answer?
Sure.
Okay. So there's a couple times here where I'm going to look away from camera and there's going to be dead space or dead time. Forgive me for that because I'm not
Mhm.
as good as Aaron as looking
Yeah.
through all the questions. But I'm going to pick a few and I'm going to pop them up here.
Okay.
Just because it's the first one, I'm going to pop it up there. So Janice,
Yay.
yay, hey
8th
Janice, how
Street,
you
right,
doing?
yeah.
Of course she's
That's
watching.
right. So that's where the USLO was. It was in 8th Street and Beacon.
8th Street, LA. Okay, great.
At
Janice,
8th
thank you so
Street
much
and
for letting us
Beacon, right.
know. Okay, here we go. Let's see what we got here. We're going to go to the top. Okay, we're going to do, here we go. This is the Pentecostal bubble. So excited to be here. Sterling, I'm a never in. Mom, you know what a never in is?
I guess it's never been in Scientology.
Yeah, and there's apparently a large group of them that are becoming a thing, which is hilarious to me. So never in. Or as we like to call a Muggle from Harry Potter. But I grew up as a Pentecostal. It's taken me 34 years to realize the similarities. Okay,
Interesting.
great. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I actually don't know much about Pentecostals, but I'm going to take your word for that. All right. Here we go. Let's see what else we got. See if we have any questions. Oh, if you do have questions, please say questions. So it's a lot easier for me to find. This is Marie Marion. Hello, Bitty.
Hello.
I think I spoke or chatted with her yesterday. She had some very good questions, so I wanted to pop that one up there. She seems like a very nice person.
Uh-huh.
Hello, Bitty. All right. Here we go. And by the way, we have people from Nova Scotia, Canada, Pennsylvania, San Antonio, Texas, Northeast Pennsylvania. Oh, that's John Satowski. Hello. Hey, from Northeast Pennsylvania. Hashtag Team Mike. Yes, hashtag Team Mike for sure. As you can imagine, my mom's known Mike forever, and we support him, and we hope he fully recovers, and we're happy to hear he's doing better. Here we go. Jersey. Here we go. Choctaw Nation Princess. Hello, Sterling and lovely. That's you, Mom. Lovely. Bitty, been waiting since yesterday. Thank you for waiting for so long. I think I spoke about it yesterday in a live, so that's why she's saying that. All right.
Great.
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna let you say whatever you want also when they ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is here we go. I think Choctaw Nation has the best responses about Justin sometimes. So at Sterling, Justin is considered a unicorn. Is SPTV Nation and Reese PCs? Oh, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, but yes, Justin is a unicorn. Mom, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah.
Just yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let's see. There's actually quite a few in here, so I'm just going to go from the top to the bottom, and we're going to go at it for probably about 10 more minutes. Here we go. Oh, okay. I have to answer this one. SP Tattoo Warrior. Question, Sterling. Have you seen me comment that I see your volleyball and that I'm a national official in volleyball, tennis, and softball? Yes, I have. I'm not good at answering the chats. And thank you so much for commenting on this because I finally get a chance. Yeah, you see my volleyball here. That's actually signed by the OG beach volleyball player St. John Smith. I have a friend who's my partner on volleyball on Wednesday nights, and she worked for him in his volleyball camp. So I actually have a signed ball from him, which I'm extremely proud of. I also play softball, as you know, volleyball, and that's super cool that you're a referee and an umpire. That's really, really cool. I love that. Here we go. I think Amy Scobie's actually doing a live at the same time, so I apologize if we crossed over times. I didn't mean to do that, but yeah, that may be why I'm getting a couple comments about that. All right, let's see.
You know what I suggest, Sterling, is
What's
that you
that?
look at all the comments and go through them all, and then we can do it all at once rather than having a lot of blank time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think, and
And
I'm
then
gonna
we
have to
can do
ask
it on the
Aaron
next
about that. I
video.
think they're on here. So while you're talking, I would have to go look at them, and I don't want to do that. It's sort of hard, but I got to ask him how he does it. There's got to be, or how, one thing is I know with Mark and Janice is that Mark looks at the comments while you guys are
Right,
talking. So
exactly.
he pre-pulls them up. As much as I want to answer the comments, I'm not good at that. So I got to figure out some system for that. But that being said, I found some good ones. There was someone apparently in the chat that was being a little rude. And so a lot of the people are calling him out for that. And so I had to go through that whole section. But I'm closer here, and I actually have someone Mike
Oh,
Reppin.
yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
Bitty and Foster. Lovely interview. I don't know. I guess Mike knew Foster. I'm not sure about that,
Yes,
but
I'm sure he did.
okay, great. Well, hi, Mike. How you doing? Thank you so much. Janice Gillum Grady again. Sterling, you are third generation. Bitty is second gener.
Correct.
Oh, well, that's a good question, though. Yeah, I guess I am. Yeah. Ooh, got that wrong. Thank you, Janice. And we have Grady in the house. That's nice. Okay, so this is funny. I have to put this up. Bison 5360. Hello, Mark Fisher, my Astros fan. Okay, so yesterday I called out Mark Fisher because he told me in our last interview that he was an Astros fan. I'm a Dodgers fan. So we don't like the Astros because they're cheaters. And so this person apparently is from Houston, and I do appreciate that you're watching the video live. But she is saying my Astros fan to Mark Fisher, which I find actually quite funny. It's a baseball thing. Okay. Okay. Goldie, if you're watching this, I will reach out to you. I will have Aaron send you my email so you can moderate the channel. And I appreciate that. Okay, let's see what else we have here. I'm going to try to talk while I'm looking through these. Very nice. Thank you, Mark. There we go. Yeah, so Mom, it's a little difficult because there was someone creating a little bit of problems in the chat. And so a lot of people are suggesting Goldie, which is this fantastic lady apparently that moderates, and she takes out all the negative not negative comments. I want to make sure that's clear. She takes out the inappropriate comments in the chat as you're doing the lives, so that I don't have to go through the people that are just trying to cause a problem and are most likely OSA hired people to do that. So here we go. Let's see. And as we move along, you'll figure out who Goldie is. She's very well known and everything. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's go all the way to. I'm going to go to the bottom now. See if there's any question. Here we go. Let's add this one here. Oh my God, it's fast. Okay, so here, this may Beth O'Toole. This may be a secret, Aaron's secret to this, because I only have one screen. Aaron has 3 screens, so he looks like he's looking at the screen, but he's really checking the chat. So maybe I need to do that. I will try that later on. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Okay. Kitty Mom Carol. Well, I'm a Phillies fan, so not a fan of the Astros either. Well, good for you. I agree. Phillies should have won the World Series last year. I actually was born in Clearwater, Florida. So as a very young person, I went to go see a couple of games, spring training games for the Phillies. So I kind of like the Phillies a little bit. Let's see what else. See if there's any other questions here. Okay, this is an interesting question. Nikki C, question: why do you call your parents by name? Pretty simple. On my first interview with Aaron, we tried to describe what the family tree is and how it works. And I was raised by my stepmom, Barbara Tompkins, and something we're going to get into later on about Justin and I and how we split at one point. But I was raised by her. So it gets confusing when I just say mom directly, especially since most of the people watching the live or that watched SP Network are going to know my mom by Bitty. So I will refer to her as Bitty every once in a while, just so it doesn't get confusing. And I hope that makes sense to you, Nikki. All right. Let's see what else we have. Okay. Here we go. This is a good question. You get to answer this one. Marie Marianne, question: are you and Justin identical twins? Go ahead.
No.
Thank you. Thank you for the very verbose answer. Come on.
They're fraternal twins, and
which means
they are
what?
not. Well, I'm not going to get into all the reproductive reasonings behind it, but they're not identical, and they're they don't look alike. They can be boy or girl. As a matter of fact, David Miscavige and Denise Miscavige are twins, and she's a girl and he's a guy. And so in this case, it's Justin and Sterling are twins, and they're fraternal. Same thing, just not identical, not the same egg split up.
Thank you so much for explaining that. I have to put this one up. Jess 3675. Aaron is having a meltdown right now. So, Mom, I don't know if you know this, but Aaron has a distinct distaste for dead time or dead space, which is what I like to do when I look at the comments. So part of me exaggerates it a little bit because also Aaron used to write knowledge reports like a madman when he's in the Sea Org, and that drives me nuts. So I'm just getting back at him for fun. How about that? But Jess 3675, that's pretty funny. All right, here we go. Okay, here we go. This is an interesting question. The Mommers. Question: Bitty and Sterling, how would you explain to Neverins the pressure parents made for you to join the Sea Org? Why don't you start off with that?
I just when I was young and being told to go into Scientology and the Sea Org at that time, my mom, I was given at that time pretty much no choice. I was told I had to go in there or go to a reform school, which it's called Joliet in Illinois, and so at that time there was no choice. You had to go where your mom said to go or your dad said to go, and that's how it was.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
When I did actually join the Sea Org, there wasn't a lot of pressure from Foster and Barbara. We actually never discussed it, but it sort of seemed, even though I was raised in Scientology and my parents were in the Sea Org, I don't ever remember there being a specific conversation. Hey, join the Sea Org. It was kind of just what you figured you were going to do in the end. So I don't remember there being a whole lot of pressure for me personally. Another good question here, or not a question, just a compliment I thought I would put up there. Katie Pie, Bitty is so beautiful. Jenna looks so much like her. That's very nice. Thank you, Katie Pie. Let's see. This is a good question for you, Mom. Julie L. Question: Bitty, was it really confusing to be inundated with Catholicism in school and being indoctrinated in Dianetics? I had 12 years of parochial school, so it seems to me like a dichotomy for a kid.
At the time when I was growing up, first off, indoctrinated in Dianetics, it wasn't like um, Dianetics was a group you joined or you were a part of. It was just a way of dealing with certain things. So it's sort of like Catholicism and sweeping your room out. You know, it's like the same, that it wasn't like two different opposing groups. There was Catholicism. There might have been, you know, Judaism or these other ones that might have been opposing, but Dianetics at that time was very small and it was just a way of doing things and a way of analyzing your life and looking at things. It wasn't like they didn't work in opposing groups or circles.
Okay. Okay. I think I might, while you were doing that, I might have figured out how Aaron does this. There's a little starred button. So as we're talking, or as you're telling a story or a section, and I'm not involved in it, I can actually go through and star the comments, so I can just pop them up quickly. So here, I'm going to pop this one up here. Eileen Sass. I love that last name, Sass. Looking forward to a future video with Elizabeth Blythe and Sterling Tompkins and Justin. What do you think about that, Mom?
Great.
Do you think it's possible?
Yeah, I don't know. You have to ask Justin, and you know, obviously us two are here, but you'd have to ask Justin.
And to be clear, by the way, all the fun we have with Justin, there's not a day that goes by where I don't do a video or do an interview where he calls me to give me feedback and give me advice. So he definitely is watching the videos, and I know he appreciates it. And I think he was very excited, Mom, for you coming on tonight. So that's pretty cool. Here we go. George Massey. I thought Justin's middle name was Bigfoot or Sasquatch, not Lyle. Yeah, that's probably true. That's actually pretty funny. All right, let's go down to the bottom here. We're just going to go for the next 9 minutes and then call it quits. Let's see what we got. Okay, this is for you, Justin. Jill Harrison. Hi, Justin, if you're watching. That's great. That's great. Thank you so much, Jill. Let's see. Okay. Oh, we do have Goldie back in the chat, so she is moderating. Thank you so much, Goldie. And Mom moderating. It took me forever to figure out what that was, but it is just going through the comments and making sure nothing that isn't the subject or that is just a distraction gets thrown in there, so that the people that are actually watching to get information can ask intelligent questions or make comments or say stuff that's relevant to the conversation. So apparently she's in the chat now, which is awesome. Okay, here we go. And if anyone doesn't have any questions that are pertinent, please throw them in there right now. Let's go. Let's see. Yeah, so this is Goldie here. So again, I want to say thank you. I look at all the SPTV content creators. Always thank Goldie. So I want to say thank you, Goldie. Thanks for sending a message to Aaron. I'll make sure that he has my information so that you can contact me, so that we can make the whole process smoother. And I appreciate everything you do for the network, so that people can talk about their stories and get their message out. So thank you so much. All right. It's going to be too much dead air to sit here and talk about and look through the questions. So first of all, Mom, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time tonight to talk. I hope you had a good time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm hoping we can do another interview in a couple of weeks. Probably do it on like a Saturday morning. And then, yeah, I would love to hear the rest of the story, because really for me, this is the first time to have a dedicated amount of time just to talk to you about these things. And your story is just as fascinating as anyone else's. And I love hearing about it. So unless you have anything else to say, I'm going to end the live. But thank you again so much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.